You know that feeling when you pull into a parking lot and you see it, gleaming under the sun, lifted about 4 inches higher than it needs to be, chrome rims catching every bit of light available, tires so wide they look borrowed from a tractor, and not a single scratch, not a single speck of mud, not even a water stain anywhere on the body. And you think to yourself, that thing has never seen a dirt road in its life. It's a truck, built for hauling, towing, off-roading, getting things done. But instead, it's sitting outside a Starbucks with a $7 latte in the cup holder and an owner who just spent $400 detailing it last weekend. That, right there, is what people call a pavement princess. And I don't say that to make fun of anyone. I genuinely don't. Because here's the thing. Most of us have a version of that truck in our financial life, something we pay a premium for, maintain obsessively, and secretly, or maybe not so secretly, use to say something about ourselves to the world. The truck is just the most visible, most expensive, most honestly perfect metaphor for a financial trap that's quietly bleeding millions of people dry every single month. My name is Emmy, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, the psychology behind how people spend it, and why certain financial patterns are so sticky, so deeply wired into how we see ourselves, that even smart, hardworking people can't seem to escape them no matter how many budgeting apps they download, or how many no-spend months they attempt. And the Pavement Princess trap is one of those patterns. It's one I want to dig into today because it goes so much deeper than just trucks. It's really about a specific kind of spending, the kind where you're paying for the idea of a lifestyle rather than the actual experience of one. And by the end of this, I think you're going to start seeing it everywhere, in your own life, in the lives of people around you, in advertisements, in social media, in the way we're basically trained from the time we're old enough to want things to confuse looking capable with being capable. That confusion, that little mental mix-up, is costing people tens of thousands of dollars over the course of their lives, and we need to talk about it. So let's actually start with the truck, because it's worth understanding what we're really dealing with here before we zoom out. A full-size pickup truck, let's say a Ford F-150, a Ram 1500, a Chevy Silverado, something in that category. The average transaction price for one of those right now is somewhere around $50,000 to $60,000. That is not a small number. That is, in many parts of the world, the cost of a house. And yet, they are the best-selling vehicles in America, have been for decades. The F-Series has been the best-selling vehicle in the United States for over 40 years straight. Not just the best-selling truck, the best-selling vehicle, period. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Studies, surveys, actual data collected by automotive researchers consistently show that somewhere between 70% and 80% of pickup truck owners never, or almost never, use their truck for actual truck things. They don't tow trailers, they don't haul materials, they don't go off-road. They drive to work, they drive to the grocery store, they drive their kids to school, things you could do in a Honda Civic for a third the price. And I want to be careful here because I'm not saying every truck owner is being irrational. Some people genuinely need a truck. Contractors, farmers, people who actually tow and haul regularly. A truck makes complete economic sense for them. The tool justifies its cost because it's actually being used as a tool. But that's not the 70% to 80%. The 70% to 80% bought the truck because of how it made them feel, because of what it communicated, because of the image. And again, I'm not judging the feeling. The feeling is real. The psychology behind it is completely understandable. I just want us to look at what that feeling actually costs. If you finance a $55,000 truck at current interest rates over 72 months, which is now one of the most common loan terms because monthly payments have gotten so high that people need to stretch them out, you're looking at somewhere around $800 to $1,000 just in payments. Add insurance on a vehicle that expensive, probably $200 to $300 a month. Add fuel, because most of these trucks get somewhere between 14 and 18 miles per gallon on a good day. Add the inevitable maintenance, the detailing, the accessories, because if you bought the truck for the image, you're probably also buying the accessories for the image. Floor mats, bed liners, running boards, maybe a lift kit, maybe new wheels. you are very realistically looking at $1,500 to $2,000 a month on a vehicle that you use to sit in traffic and pick up groceries. That is not a truck. That is a subscription to a feeling, and that subscription is why you're broke. But here's the thing I really want you to sit with. And this is where we have to zoom out, because the truck is just the entry point. The Pavement Princess trap isn't really about trucks. It's about a specific category of purchase that I think of as performance spending. Spending that is primarily, fundamentally, about performing a version of yourself to the world, and sometimes to yourself, rather than solving an actual problem or creating an actual experience. Performance spending shows up in so many places. The home gym that's actually a very expensive clothing rack. The professional-grade camera that's used to take vacation photos that a phone camera would handle just as well. The premium gym membership at the fancy gym with the smoothie bar and the saunas, when there's a perfectly functional gym 12 minutes closer that costs $40 less a month. The designer handbag that lives in a dusty closet and comes out twice a year. The boat that sits in storage for 10 months and costs thousands in maintenance and fees. None of these things are inherently wrong, but notice the pattern. They're all things that signal a lifestyle more than they enable one. You're not buying the thing for the function, you're buying the thing for what having the thing says about you. And I think, honestly, most of us know this on some level. We know when we're buying something for the image. We know when the real motivation is about how we'll look, what people will think, how it'll make us feel to be the kind of person who has that thing. We're not stupid. But knowing it and being able to stop it are two very different things, and that's worth exploring. Because here's why performance spending is so psychologically sticky. It's actually solving a real emotional need. That's the part that makes it so hard to just stop doing it. When someone buys that truck, the gleaming, lifted, never-been off-road truck, they're not making a purely irrational decision. They're making an emotional investment in an identity. And identity is one of the most powerful forces in human psychology. We don't just want things, we want to be someone. We want to have a clear, stable sense of who we are, and we want to communicate that to other people in a way that gets recognized and respected. There's actually research on this, a concept called identity-based consumption, which is basically the academic way of saying that we buy things to tell a story about who we are. And the more uncertain or unstable our sense of identity is in a particular period of life, the more vulnerable we are to this kind of spending. Young men, especially, are statistically some of the biggest targets for exactly this pattern, because early adulthood is a period of intense identity formation. There's enormous social pressure around status and competence and capability. And a truck is basically a four-wheeled advertisement that says, I am capable, I am strong, I am someone who does things. The problem is that the advertisement costs $55,000 and doesn't actually make any of those things true. And what's quietly devastating about this is that the money going to perform capability is often the exact money that would be needed to build it. The $1,500 a month on the truck payment and insurance could be, instead, $1,500 going into investments, into a business, into actual skills, into actual tools that generate income. But instead, it's going toward the appearance of a life rather than the construction of one. That's the trap in its most brutal form. Let me give you a real example that I think makes this concrete. Imagine two guys, same age, same income, same starting point. We'll call them Marcus and Daniel. Both of them make around $60,000 a year. Both of them are in their late 20s. Marcus buys the truck, the big one. He justifies it because he might help his friend move someday, and honestly, it just looks amazing, and he worked hard for it. And life is short. His total monthly vehicle costs end up around $1,900. He tells himself he'll start investing once things calm down financially. Daniel buys a 3-year-old reliable sedan for $18,000, finances it conservatively, and his total monthly vehicle costs are around $450. The difference, roughly $1,400 to $1,500 a month, he puts in index funds. Fast forward 10 years, Marcus still looks great pulling into parking lots. He's also on his second truck at this point, because trucks depreciate, and because once you're in the identity loop, it's very hard to step down. He has not started investing in any meaningful way. He has essentially spent a very large portion of a decade's worth of surplus income on the experience of feeling like someone who is doing well. Daniel, at a 7% average annual return over 10 years, has somewhere in the neighborhood of $250,000 sitting in investments, just from that one decision, just from choosing not to perform wealth and choosing instead to build it. That number is not an exaggeration. That's just compound interest doing what compound interest does when you actually give it something to work with. I think about that gap, that $250,000 gap, and I feel something that's hard to fully describe. It's not judgment toward Marcus. It's something more like grief, maybe, because Marcus worked hard. Marcus wanted good things for himself. Marcus was just playing a game he didn't fully realize he was playing, and by the time most people start to see the game clearly, a lot of the most valuable years are already behind them. Now, I want to talk about the role that other people play in all of this, because I don't think we can have an honest conversation about performance spending without acknowledging how much of it is about audience. There's a quote, often misattributed but the idea is solid, that we spend money we don't have to buy things we don't need to impress people we don't like. And the darkly funny thing is that the people we're trying to impress are almost certainly too focused on their own performance to be paying the kind of attention we imagine. Think about the last time you were genuinely impressed by someone's car, like genuinely changed your opinion of them as a person because of the vehicle they drove. Really think about it, because I would guess that for most of you, the answer is either rarely or never. We might notice a nice car, we might have a passing thought, but it doesn't fundamentally change how we view someone's intelligence, their character, their value as a person, or a friend, or a colleague. And yet, we spend as if it does. We spend as if the people around us are keeping meticulous score of our possessions and updating their assessment of us in real time. We spend as if the truck is load-bearing, as if without it, something about our reputation or identity collapses. It doesn't. It genuinely doesn't. And I think most of us, when we're being honest with ourselves in a quiet moment, know that. But social comparison is such a powerful, deeply embedded survival instinct that it bypasses the logical part of our brain almost every time. You don't think your way into performance spending, you feel your way into it, and then you think of reasons why it makes sense afterward. So what actually breaks the pattern? Because I don't want this to just be a very long, eloquent way of making you feel bad about your choices. That's not useful. What's useful is understanding what actually works. The first thing, and this sounds almost offensively simple, but bear with me, is getting genuinely specific about what you actually want your life to look like. Not the performed version, the real version. Because here's what I've noticed. Most performance spending fills a vacuum. When you don't have a clear, concrete, emotionally resonant picture of what you're actually building toward, status purchases rush in to fill that space. They give you something to show for your effort. They make the present feel more significant. But if you have a real goal, a specific goal, not I want to be financially free someday, but I want to have $400,000 invested by the time I'm 40 so I have choices about how I spend my time, then every performance purchase becomes a direct trade-off against that specific thing. And suddenly the truck doesn't look like a reward. It looks like a $250,000 delay on the thing you actually want. The second thing is learning to separate identity from objects. This is genuinely harder and takes longer, but it matters enormously. The goal is to find cheaper or free ways to express and reinforce the identity you want, and to start recognizing that the people who are actually doing the thing don't usually need to perform it. Real outdoors people often drive modest, beat-up trucks or old 4Runners with actual mud on them and a pile of gear in the back. Real contractors have scratched-up work trucks that look like they've been used. Real wealth, statistically, looks a lot more like a 10-year-old Camry in the driveway of a paid-off house than a new luxury vehicle in the driveway of a mortgaged one. The performance of capability and the actual possession of it tend to look surprisingly different. Getting comfortable with that, letting yourself look like less than you could look like because you're too busy actually building something to maintain the display, is one of the most quietly radical financial decisions a person can make. The third thing is to audit your spending to feelings. Go through your spending, honestly, actually go through it, and for every significant expense, ask, am I buying the experience or the idea of the experience? Am I using this or am I paying for the comfort of knowing I could use this? Am I solving a real problem or performing a solution to an imaginary one? This isn't about becoming austere. It's not about stripping your life of nice things. It's about making sure the nice things you have are actually nice to you, actually used, actually enjoyed, actually creating value in your lived experience, rather than just serving as props in the story you're telling about yourself. There's one more thing I want to touch on, and it's a bit harder to talk about, but I think it's actually the most important piece. A lot of performance spending, and I mean a lot of it, is self-medication. It's a response to feelings of inadequacy, uncertainty, anxiety, or a sense that you're not enough as you currently are. And that is such a deeply human feeling that I don't want to minimize it for even a second. When life feels uncertain, when you don't feel confident in your direction, when you're not sure whether you're doing well enough or being enough, buying something big and visible and impressive is a way of giving yourself and the world a piece of evidence to the contrary. See, I'm fine. Look at what I have. I must be doing okay. And for a moment, sometimes for a few weeks, it genuinely works. The new truck smell, the glances in the parking lot, the way it feels to drive it off the lot, there's a real dopamine response there, a real, if temporary, hit of confidence and identity and okayness. But it fades. It always fades. And then you need another hit, and the cycle of spending to feel okay, of using objects as emotional stabilizers, of building an expensive stage set around an inner life that still feels uncertain, that cycle, I think, is the deeper trap underneath the financial one. The financial cost is enormous, but the cost to your actual sense of self, the way performance spending can actually delay the development of genuine confidence because you're outsourcing your sense of worth to your possessions instead of building it through actual capability and actual action, that cost is harder to measure and maybe even harder to recover from. Real confidence is boring to look at from the outside. It doesn't have chrome rims, it doesn't make a statement in the parking lot. It looks like a person who is quietly working on something real, who doesn't need the audience, who has enough of a sense of their own direction that they don't need their car or their watch or their wardrobe to argue on their behalf. That's the person who ends up wealthy. Not because wealth is the goal, but because once you stop spending tens of thousands of dollars maintaining a performance, wealth is more or less what happens. So let me pull all of this together, because I've taken you on a bit of a winding journey here, and I want to land it somewhere useful. The Pavement Princess trap, at its core, is about confusing the performance of a life with the actual living of one. It's about paying, often enormously, to look like someone who has things figured out, while diverting the exact resources you'd need to actually figure things out. The truck is the symbol, but the pattern shows up everywhere, in the gym memberships we don't use, in the gear we buy for hobbies we haven't started yet, in the clothes that express a version of ourselves we haven't quite grown into, in the gadgets that make us feel like productive people without requiring us to actually be productive. Every time we choose the performance over the substance, we're making a trade, and usually the trade feels small in the moment. It's just one purchase, it's just this month, it's just a reward for working hard. But compounded across years, across the exact years when building financial foundations matters most, those trades add up to a gap, sometimes a $250,000 gap, sometimes more. The good news, and I really mean this, is seeing the trap is most of the work. Once you can identify performance spending for what it is, once you can catch yourself in the moment of wanting the object and ask, what am I actually buying here? And is this solving a real problem or performing a solution to an imaginary one? This isn't about becoming austere. It's not about stripping your life of nice things. It's about making sure the nice things you have are actually nice to you, actually used, actually enjoyed, actually creating value in your lived experience, rather than just serving as props in the story you're telling about yourself. There's one more thing I want to touch on, and it's a bit harder to talk about, but I think it's actually the most important piece. A lot of performance spending, and I mean a lot of it, is self-medication. It's a response to feelings of inadequacy, uncertainty, anxiety, or a sense that you're not enough as you currently are. And that is such a deeply human feeling that I don't want to minimize it for even a second. When life feels uncertain, when you don't feel confident in your direction, when you're not sure whether you're doing well enough or being enough, buying something big and visible and impressive is a way of giving yourself and the world a piece of evidence to the contrary. See, I'm fine. Look at what I have. I must be doing okay. And for a moment, sometimes for a few weeks, it genuinely works. The new truck smell, the glances in the parking lot, the way it feels to drive it off the lot, there's a real dopamine response there. A real, if temporary, hit of confidence and identity and okayness. But it fades. Every time we choose the performance over the substance, we're making a trade. And usually the trade feels small in the moment. It's just one purchase. It's just this month. It's just a reward for working hard, but compounded across years, across the exact years when building financial foundations matters most. Those trades add up to a gap. Sometimes a $250,000 gap, sometimes more. The good news, and I really mean this, is that seeing the trap is most of the work. Once you can identify performance spending for what it is, once you can catch yourself in the moment of wanting the object and ask, what am I actually buying here? And is this solving a real problem or performing a solution? The power of the pattern starts to weaken. Not immediately, not completely, but genuinely. You don't have to become someone who doesn't want nice things. You don't have to perform poverty the way you were performing wealth. You just have to start making the purchases that are actually in service of the life you want to build, rather than the life you want to appear to have built. The pavement, honestly, doesn't need a princess, and you don't need the truck. You need the $250,000 and the version of yourself, quieter, less flashy, less immediately impressive in parking lots, who got there. That version of you exists. It's not that far away. It's just on the other side of a few honest questions and a slightly less expensive set of monthly payments. And I think you already know that. I think some part of you has known it for a while. Sometimes you just need someone to say it out loud. So, there it is, out loud. If this gave you something to think about, share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you want to keep pulling on these threads, the psychology of money, why we make the financial choices we do, and what actually works when it comes to building real financial stability, I'll see you in the next one.